Truck 17, come in.
Go ahead, Truck 17.
Primary complete.
Command copies, primary complete.
What's up, folks, and welcome to another episode of Primary Complete. Before we kick off the show, do us a quick favor. Like and subscribe. At the end of the show, if you enjoyed it, leave a quick comment. These simple little things make our platform more visible to folks who are looking for the type of show that we produce. For all of you who are constantly interacting with us on social media, talking about the show in your firehouses and with your friends, we can't say thank you enough for helping us build this awesome community. If you haven't yet, check out the social media. Search Primary Complete Podcast on Insta, Facebook, TikTok. Give it a quick like. We also got a website. Feel free to check that out. www.primarycompletepodcast.com. Thank you all once again. Enjoy the next episode and continue to help us make conversation great again.
Hey everyone, it's Sam. Welcome to the 2448. I am here with Steve and Matt from Primary Complete Podcast, and we're so excited to dive into their story today. Welcome to the show, guys.
What's up?
Yeah, how's it going?
How do you feel about
Oh,
that?
yeah, that was real. Okay. Yeah, that was real. How did y'all learn how to be storytellers? I feel like that's probably the hardest thing of getting the right story.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't accept any credit for that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I think the hope was that the guest, we're offering the platform and we're having them in there for a reason. Like, we want to hear what they have to say, and we have done shows back and forth. But yeah, there's been no leaning on any sort of storytelling skills.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just two human beings who don't mind talking.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk about anybody, and you can always find something to relate with somebody with. So, a guest comes in, whether it's talking about their personal life or their fire life or whatever, you can always find, parallels and the way they resonate with you. And then you just kind of go from there.
How'd y'all get into this whole thing? What started? You're a fireman. I guess you were the instructor at the fire. What the hell happened here?
Yeah.
Sorry for the sniffles.
Yeah.
This mountain air's getting me.
Yeah.
Mountain
We'll
air.
Control Alt Delete those out of there.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So there was a need, like this black hole that existed in the fire service. Like, the suicide rate was going up. Mental health was not great, especially in our area, but I think everywhere, just with the new world that we live in, and we needed something. So the idea was create this room that mimicked a kitchen table. Like we talked about how valuable those, if we could bring in outside humans and just say, hey, be invisible and sit at this kitchen table and listen. There's so much good stuff that happens in a firehouse.
Yeah.
In the kitchen, and that was the idea. Like, let's bring that kitchen table in somewhere.
How did y'all begin to our show listeners may or may not be firefighters. Like, they may not have any idea what it's like to be in the fire station. How did you realize? I guess you would have had to first become a firefighter and then recognize there's a problem and then get into starting the show.
Yeah.
Walk me all the way back. Where did the even interest in the fire service begin?
For me, let's see, I started in a little town of Clinton, which is in Sampson County, so it's a little more, it's about an hour or so away from Wilmington. Totally different county. Just out of when I graduated high school in 2004, worked for my brother-in-law. He owns a gas company, so I worked with him for about 8 months. And I had several friends in my little clique that I hung out with in high school whose fathers and stuff were firemen, and then they were firemen too.
Yeah.
I was always guilty of hanging out with the older crowd. I have 3 older sisters, so I always gravitated toward older individuals. Hence why I hang out with Steve. And no, so I left work one day and I called my buddy Josh and I was like, "Hey man, what do you have to do to be a fireman?" And he was like, he walked me through little odds and ends stuff, and he was like, "Turns out we're having a process on Saturday. You should come do it." And this is like Thursday. I was like, okay. So I went, and the first time I ever put my feet in turnout boots ever was to do an agility test for a department that I was trying to hire. Yep. So I ended up getting hired with them.
You went right through and got on?
Yeah, pretty immediately. Zero. I had no. I was straight Joe Blow off the streets. Didn't know anything about it. So I got hired by them. They sent me to the Fayetteville Technical Fire Academy. So I went to that for a little while. I would go to class all day, go back to Clinton and work at the firehouse all night. And so that was the probably first 14 months of my fire service career was
That's
academy and then work at night. And then I got done with all that. And at that time, they had 2 daytime shifts. So it was A and B shift, and they just worked daytime. So it was 6A to 6P. And then part-time staff would come in the evenings. So I worked both shifts. I worked every single day, 7 days a week from 6A to 6P.
Just got
every single day, just about.
No way.
Every single day. So I worked with both shifts. Got a lot of exposure, got a lot of fires, got a lot of time to see different personalities. It was a smaller department, but everybody ticks different.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I had my favorites and whatnot, but I mean, I was hooked.
Was that kind of your first real job, or was the other thing a proper
It was
thing too?
no. I live in the country, so I mean, I've had full-time
You
job
worked a
with
lot.
benefits since I was 7.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No. I mean, I grew up working, obviously, but that was my first real job, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I worked part-time with my brother-in-law prior to that, so yeah, that was my first like actual job.
That's cool.
So yeah, I hung out there, stayed there for a while, and then probably one of the most influential characters in my entire life was like, hey man, Clinton's a great place to be if you want a job, but if you want a career, you got to get out of here. So
Really?
I did, yeah. So I applied for New Hanover, which is where I've been for the past going on 16 years.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
yep,
cool.
Yeah.
Do you work there too? I guess
I do,
You guys
yeah.
kind of met up through that New Hanover connection. How'd that come about?
Yeah, my intro into the fire service was far less like there was no real honor in it. The economy had dipped, and I was like, I was my own boss and did tree work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love it. It's good work, but man, when that economy dropped, nobody needed their trees trimmed anymore.
Oh,
So I
that's
was like,
funny.
I gotta have a job. Like, I need benefits and like a paycheck that comes when it's supposed to. So I called around Chief Flowers. I called him. I was like, is there room in the fire service for somebody like me? And
I feel like, ladders, ropes, like, saws, hello. It's
Yeah.
really like,
he was like, you'll be a good fit. So he said, turns out we're hiring. And the same thing, like I was off the street, no prior experience.
oh, interesting.
And I think I'm right. That was the first time New Hanover County had offered, like, you just apply, we'll train you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have they got their own training academy and all that stuff?
No, not so much. We did for a while. We ran several classes, probably 5 or 6, and then I guess they became too expensive or whatever the reasoning was. We quit doing it, so we
Yeah.
don't do that route anymore. But
Yeah.
and it's been a real detriment to the quality of employee that we're able to get.
That stinks. Yeah. What was it that kept you, like, once you got into it, did you know, man, this is definitely where I belong?
In the academy, my academy was 7 months. And I learned a lot. I was into getting the knowledge. The instructors were good. We talked about that on the way up. The crew there, it was great.
Yeah.
But I still didn't know that I liked it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in my head, I was here for the benefits. I was gonna get through this
You're going to run
economy,
shift for a couple years.
and I'm out.
Yeah.
I had no intention of staying. Like, all truth.
That's funny.
And then I worked one shift at Ogden. I remember Lieutenant Merrill was in the officer seat, Josh Tyson's driving, Nick Ski's in the back, and I'm the new kid. And we get a car wreck. We go down Market Street. That Federal's pin lights are going. And I'm like, oh, no.
I was getting bit by the bug.
Yeah. I was like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And then when we got fire, that was like, uh-oh.
What was your first fire like?
The first fire that went normal, like we showed
That
up.
went normal.
Whatever that means.
know,
I'm curious what the second fire was.
When you're new in the back and you show up like third or fourth due, you're
Yeah,
not
your
going
hand and pike
inside.
pole's not doing anything.
You didn't
Yeah.
stretch the line. Like, nothing went normal. My first one that went right, we were first due. You and Buckner were on the truck and hardwood. So we pull up, the truck's on our heels, which is pretty magical. You guys got there pretty fast. So I stretched to the front door. My officer's like, truck company's going to search in front of you. You just go with them. So I'm like, all right. So, man, the line stretched right and charged it. These guys go in the door, and I just followed them, and we searched like kitchen area. and then go down the hallway, find fire in the bedroom. You might remember it was a waterbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
We have a guy here that's got a waterbed. Loves this thing.
yeah, when I looked in the room, the top of the waterbed had burned off, so it was a perfect reflection of the window.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm like, my brain's trying to figure out, we're on the first floor.
Yeah, what the heck's going on?
There's no window in a basement, but the reflection's telling me there is.
That's so wild. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was perfect. Like, smoke's banked down. You can hear the crackle of the fire. I wasn't aware of any of this stuff. You know, like, this is the first real one. All
Oh,
the others
wow.
were gas fires. And
Oh, yeah, they're all LP burns in your
Yeah.
academies and
Yeah,
stuff.
so this one, like, stuff's burning, and it wasn't hot. Like, I thought it was warm
I'm
at
sure.
the time,
Yeah,
but it
first
wasn't
time.
hot. And, yeah, that was the one that, like, set the hook.
And you were like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
What was your first? Do you remember your first fire?
Oh man, I think I do. It was July 3rd, 2005.
Remember exactly the date and time and place.
Yeah.
No, I think I remember. Yeah.
Nah,
But let me just
July
tell you, and this
3rd.
was the address, and this was the color of the house.
I remember it was July 3rd because July 4th we went to Royal Lane Park, and myself and another guy got to help the firework crew crawl along the line and light the fireworks, which was
that's cool.
ridiculously amazing. So that's why I remember it.
Yeah.
But it was an apartment fire. It was on Division 2, so the apartments where they were, it just walked in and went upstairs.
Yeah.
The common area was downstairs, living room, kitchen, little half bath. You walk upstairs, that's where your bedrooms and the other bath are.
Yeah.
So it was in one of the bedrooms upstairs, and I was on the nozzle getting shoved upstairs by the guy
behind
backing
you.
me up. The
Yeah.
one I was talking with was one of my most influential characters in my life. Pushing me up, yelling at me, just getting it, laughing, having a ball.
Yeah.
So get up there, fought a little fire going up the steps, and then put the fire out, and that was about it. And it was just amazing. And then everybody comes back down, gets cleaned up, and it's all smiles all the way back to the firehouse, talking shit, and just the way it is. It was hooked.
That's
that
so
was
cool.
But that was early. I'm not even sure that I was supposed to be in a fire.
Right.
Well, in the middle, I started in this little town, Lillington, North Carolina. I was at Somerville Fire Department, and it was like sometimes you show up and it's like there's two guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's a house on fire, and I got two guys. Well, I'm not gonna not put the fire out. All right, load up. I'm hooking you to my belt. Let's go. And then someone that knows what they're doing grabs the less experienced guy and goes for gold. And it's like, like if you go to the textbook, what's the textbook say about that? I don't know. But another woman inside the house is burning her hair off is probably very thankful that someone's coming, regardless of what the story is.
Yeah. There's a time for rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time. I think there's a time and place for everything, right? But sometimes there is like go for
Gotta do what
gold.
you gotta
you know?
do.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I can
Seems-
picture a million
seems-
calls where it's like
Seems to be going away.
my first
Time for
call.
rules.
I went to a Conex box, but shot, and it was like fireworks inside of it, and so they started blowing all the fireworks
Nice.
inside this Conex box, and it was like, we're not gonna in the field, we're not gonna put it out, it doesn't matter. And the fire chief I was like, I'm hooking you to my belt. You are not supposed to be here. You are not supposed to get off this truck. Do not leave my sight. Yes, sir. So we go, and he's like, run around side of the truck, hop in the front seat. So I run around. Once we get on scene, and I hop in the front seat, and I was like, climbed in. I stood on the cue siren. It's like, wow, what the hell is going on? He's like, get off the damn pedal, man. And I was like, holy shit. And as I was running around back of the truck, I clocked my helmet on the skull saver on the back of the ladder,
Yeah.
laid myself out flat. It's a turtle shell helmet because I'm like a junior at the time. I'm rolling around like a turtle on my back. I felt like such a clown. And then I get in and set the horn off, and I was like, oh my God. But I learned a little bit. So.
I'm awful at this.
Yeah, I was exactly. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
I definitely made a few pedal pushes on accident early on.
Oh yeah. No one I feel like during the academy that would be something useful to tell new recruits. Like, hey, by the way, there's this pedal here, and it's going to make you look like an absolute buffoon if you don't know when to step on it, and when not to.
That used to be a good prank back before, the master switches and whatnot were turned on. They required power and they were digital and all that kind of stuff. Back when they were just hard throw switches, you could get out for lunch or something like that and run over to the company beside you and turn the master on, and then take the captain's boots and set them on.
That's
set 'em
as
on
soon
the
as they
cue.
cut the battery.
So as soon as they cut the battery switch, it starts winding up. Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
So what was it like as you guys started the business? I mean, like this business of the podcast, it's funny. We're interviewing folks primarily that are like in business, but I feel like a podcast is a business. It's a extracurricular activity that relates to the fire service. You bring people in, and as you started that endeavor, what was it that kind of solidified your fire service experience to say, man, I know I need to do something to support the people that I click with?
I would say probably. Well, I believe both of us are probably the two worst business people when it comes to actual trying to see the podcast as a business. It was never started with the intent of making money, and it still has no intent to make money whatsoever. Really? We talked early on, and we still talk to this day. You know, if something magical happens, and we all strive to be like Joe Rogan as a podcast, right? But our reason is far different. It's not because of the monetary compensation for our time speaking into microphones. Yeah. But if we ever get to the point where the podcast becomes self-sustainable, where it's not me and him pouring our own bank accounts into it, which is the way it's been for 2 years. Yeah. And then if we ever start making money, we're going to set it aside, and then once a year we'll take whatever we've made and we're going to donate it to a charity or something like that. We just don't have any desire to make money doing it. The message and the reasoning behind the podcast being made was when you start mixing money and sponsors and all that kind of stuff, it can have a tendency to cloud the message and cloud the authenticity a little bit, because it's like, well, they're only doing it because of this. You get a first-time listener, and they're like, well, they're only doing it because,
they're getting paid
whatever.
Whoever.
Fire tech's paying them to do it, and this and that, or, whatever.
Why do you do what you do?
You want to go?
I was getting ready to say, this might explain that one. My biggest fear in the beginning was they got off shift and they're not feeling great, or they've got some struggles at home, whatever, but they've tuned into what we've delivered, and they're riding down the road listening to it. And then the conversation that we're having is helping them, and then it cuts to commercial. And then this person's like getting help or getting something that's putting some things in line, and then we're going to shift over to commercial. So we talked about early, once it starts, just all the way through. Yeah. And that way, that fear of somebody that's listening on purpose, there's entertainment. Now that we've got some shows in, some of them are just fun. Yeah. You know what I mean? Sure. And then some are serious. I was so scared that a serious conversation would get interrupted by a commercial or by some other need. And then the perception, if you're trying to help people and you have something to offer, we know it's honorable. But the person that needs the help, they're already clouded.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so if they're seeking help, looking around, trying to find something that makes sense, and then they discount you because they automatically assume they're in it for this other reason. Yeah. So then that thing we're trying to help gets discounted or muddied up, like you said. So
how did you find you have to experience enough shit to know that others are experiencing shit.
Sure.
You gotta figure out, you have to formulate that opinion that, I can help people and I recognize what they need help with. Was there anything in y'all's fire service career that was pivotal, where you're like, man, I saw someone really have a hard time, or I think I could, by telling stories, help alleviate that pain? Or how did you come up with this idea that a podcast was something that was needed for firefighters to help support mental health?
In our profession, it's all a bunch of supposedly alpha individuals who have, for years, the fire suppression industry has taken you and attempted to mold you into this human being that compassion doesn't exist. You take everything that you learn, you put it in a little Tupperware container, and you leave that shit in your car when you get to the firehouse, because it don't come in here.
Yeah,
that's right. You don't express emotion. You don't have emotion. When you're here to do a job, and you leave your emotions at the door. Yeah. We want your ego, but we don't want your emotions.
Yeah. That's actually said quite often. Check your ego at the door, check your emotions at the door.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's unrealistic. We're all human beings.
Yeah.
And as the mental health road was kind of being paved, it was becoming a problem where, these 15, 16, 20, 30-year firemen were retiring, and then you have the suicide problem and all that kind of stuff. So it's you have that old school generation and that old school way of thinking moving out, and we know it can be better. So let's start having discussions about where it could be. Yeah. And then just the relatable stories where, it doesn't have to be call specific. It can be an argument between me and my wife, and we could be talking about that, and somebody be like, damn, I argue with my wife every night.
This is at the firehouse. You guys hear this sort of thing.
All the time. All the time sitting at the kitchen table, you hear personal stories that you probably shouldn't talk about, and then you hear about everybody's struggles, and that's part of what makes the camaraderie and the brotherhood within a firehouse what it is because everybody can relate. Yeah. But a firehouse in New York or a fireman, when they leave the firehouse, it's like they leave that peace and they leave that relatability, and it's like back into this world. In the early shows, we talked about a lot about the fire service, and the time we spend in the fire service in our careers is such a small percentage of the time that we're alive on this planet.
Yeah.
And if we're not taking care of the majority of the time, then how can we ever expect to be great at the part that's, I say the 99% and the 1%. The 1% is the firehouse work. The 99% is everything else in life that you're going to do.
Yeah.
So if you don't take care of the 99%, if your home life is shit and, you know, you're not being great to your kids or something like that, then, you know, it's going to show up in the firehouse, and that's not where you want it to show up.
Yeah.
But through these stories and through conversation, other people hear that, and they're like, well, you know, there's other people that feel the same way I do. So it's just relatable. And you never know what you might say, just a funny quote or just something that will really resonate with somebody and kind of change their mindset. And go ahead.
Are y'all kind of building that kitchen table on a broader scale for folks that may not have the kitchen table at their firehouse? Or what's the way you would lay it out?
I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty simply put. Thanks for that. We're going to copyright that.
You can. Feel free to run with it. Yeah. I feel like, you know, there are so many small town fire stations where, like, we'd get back from a call, and if it was only two of us and we had to go do the job when we get back, it's like, all right, well, I'll catch you later.
Yeah.
And it's like the job is a little bit isolated when it's so small. And, like, I love working on the ambulance because the ambulance isn't a volunteer gig. You have to be credentialed, you have to be boarded, you have to actually work for a county agency. And when you show up, you do the job, and then you decompress the job back at the station or whatever, you know. But I always like that because you do almost have that guaranteed camaraderie or guaranteed partner or whatever. But in the fire service, especially volunteer fire service, like everyone talks about the kitchen table, but the kitchen table exists in the career agencies for sure.
Yep.
And in the volunteer agencies, it sometimes does. Sometimes it's the back bumper at the bays, but
Right.
sometimes it's like one guy or one girl, and they got to run that call, and they got to come back, and that's it.
Yeah, and the majority of the firemen and the majority of the fire service industry here in North Carolina is still heavy relies on volunteers. The career staff is a small percentage. I think it's like 78% of the firefighters in our state are all volunteers. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you get a junior fireman who goes to a car wreck and sees the whole family mutilated, and then he leaves the scene. He doesn't know how to deal with that. He doesn't know what. But, I mean, he can listen to Primary Complete and maybe catch something that normalizes
processing that out.
That's right. Kind of makes it, I'm not going to say makes it okay, but, you know, something
Helps to know he's not the only person that's ever had a bad call, you know?
Yep.
What's the what was the process like? Because, like, I picture this kitchen table, and if I show up to a kitchen table, and I've shown up to kitchen tables all over the fire industry, I don't get accepted day one, you know? Like, you have to earn your stripes in order to be brought into that table. So, like, at y'all's firehouse, what was it like to earn your stripes to where you got to hear that conversation and they got to talk with you more honestly?
I was told early, keep your mouth shut. You know what I mean? So, like, nobody wants to, if you don't have time in, this is how I was explained it. Your story doesn't matter. Just be quiet and listen to the guys that have been around. And I share that now, but a little nicer than I was taught. But it's true. Like, if you want to be accepted at the table, come in and listen and learn some things, and you'll end up learning that. How would you describe that? Like the give and take of the conversation and the respect, the reverence sometimes. Like sometimes heavy something hits the table, or sometimes it's a story that's so funny. I'm thinking of Ben Bob. Yeah. It's like, if anybody interrupts this, I'll murder you because this story is amazing.
You got to kind of know the rules, the unspoken rules of the conversation.
So if you just come in quiet and then just observe, you'll learn the rules of the conversation, and then you can accurately add to the conversation or appropriately add.
Yeah, there's definitely firehouse etiquette, and it's not written, it's not spoke about, it's just, I guess, kind of passed on through action. But I mean, it's
like
definitely a real
jailhouse
thing,
rules, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
there's
a
a whole
thing.
code, you know.
That's right. It's a real thing, and every firehouse is different. Every shift is different, for that matter. But the general rule of thumb when you're new is, mouth shut, ears open, hands busy.
That's funny. Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
You said earlier, you never know what little nugget might help somebody. There's also a responsibility on the other side. Like, if you crack off a comment that's not good and not helpful for somebody that you don't have any idea that they've got all this home life stuff going on, or that call that they went on. So that's the part of the show that I don't think I predicted early. That
is the responsibility to make sure that what you say is thoughtful or
or
accounted for.
there's a risk. Like if we publish something that's negative, you know what I mean, or give somebody the opposite of what we're trying to provide, you know.
Oh, that you could do more harm than good.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, there's a responsibility there. I don't think we've ever actually talked about that as a responsibility. It's just, I think it's understood. But when you said that, it made me think like, yeah, there's that nugget can be helpful. But then if you're coming from a bad spot already, and then you say some negative
You're
stuff,
talking
like,
negative
bro,
already.
yeah, don't let my boy
Only
hear
fuels the
that.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any times when you've had guests on or that you have people on that have been sharing where you're like, ooh, I don't know that I really, not that I like this message, but I want to steer this message to somewhere different, that where you've had to get specific about them? Because you have a very specific purpose. We want to help firefighters have this kitchen table in broader places than just, wherever they are. And so how do you navigate the story? Because, I mean, if you don't pre-rehearse it, then how do you get that right?
Well, there's, and we're not just all about the mental health side of things. In our bios and all our socials and all that kind of stuff, there's many aspects to what we want the show to be. It's not just the nuggets for mental health. There's education and entertainment. So, we're not limited to only having conversations with firemen. We have politicians on our show.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
So it's broader
Yep.
social
It is
connection.
And that we approach it from that side as an educational component because
interesting.
We approach it from an educational component where we're just two firemen having a conversation with a county commissioner, for example. But that just shows normalcy. I mean, there's some ebb and flow here. She is in a place, or he is in a place of authority over our fire chief.
Oh, yeah.
We're two
Interviewing
nobodies.
the boss's boss.
That's right. We're two nobodies. I mean, and when you kind of, it's easy to talk junk or it's easy to hate on people that you don't know anything about. But when you give that person the ability to just talk in long format and it's not sound bites, you're like, well, they're human too.
Yeah, exactly.
And then hopefully in the future, when if the fire chief listens to it, they can approach their commissioner or boss or whatever mayor with a little bit different mindset. That's helpful.
Yeah.
A kitchen table mindset.
Yeah. But to answer your question, there's definitely been some times when some stories have started to go south. I'm thinking of a particular one. And the guest, we were all feeling pretty good at that point, but he was feeling extra good. And it was just discussing his home life and whatnot. And it got pretty muddy for a minute. And so we let it go. And I think we actually ended up cutting that part out. We didn't even notify him that we were doing it, but we did it just to save him.
Yeah. Sometimes there's that responsibility.
No, but even if it's a negative message coming from somebody, it's still a message, and it's still their perspective.
That's a good
and
point.
You don't have to agree with it by any means.
Journalistic freedom is.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with
author.
it, but it's still theirs.
Yeah.
So it's still their opinion or their perspective. So yeah,
That's cool.
We enjoy difference of opinions. We don't like being. And we don't like having always like-minded people down there in the studio because, everybody in the echo chamber is kind of an unproductive conversation. It's like, you're just, you're farmers with pitchforks at that time looking for witches. And we're all together going to start, So we encourage debate. We like debate.
Yeah.
And we like showing that you can have debates and have differences of opinions and still have hugs and leave happy. You know what I mean?
Fair. I think that's really important. Very important skills that people need to develop,
I got so angry in one show, and I hit it well. That's my new superpower is to be furious and then just everything's cool.
I don't do that well. My wife can see. She's like, I don't know what's wrong, but I know something's wrong.
I can see it in him a lot of times, but
I remember it was an answer to a question, and it hit me, and I was like, that cannot be your answer. Let's try again.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you can walk people back or reword questions or use whatever interview skills you've learned or picked up on the way to kind of, maybe help them walk themselves out of that situation.
Yeah, like, hey, man,
that's
here's a path you can save yourself if you want.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, take me back to when you guys started. Some of the, you guys sit in the firehouse one day and said, hey, let's start a podcast? Or how did you go from a firefighter to having this idea and putting that into action?
Let's see. Well, I was at work one day, and myself and another coworker, my captain at the time, we had done a podcast in the past, but it was so rudimentary. It was terrible. It was all focused on firefighter fitness and whatnot, and we did it in the bunk room at our station.
Sit ups and
No, we didn't. There was no video. It was all audio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but just discussing exercises and whatnot. We were both really high geeks into that world at that time. But it was good. I mean, the content was good, but the production was just terrible. We had like plug-in USB mics. We plugged into a laptop headsets, and it was garbage. But so I dabbled in that world a little bit. I would assume that's why Steve called me to present the idea for this show. Is because I had somewhat of a knowledge or background. Maybe it was because I'm pretty and
that's
I don't know. But I was working one day and Steve called me and was just like, "Hey, let me bounce something off of you." And then he introduced the idea, and I was like, "Okay." But I told him, I was like, I've got like 60 irons in the fire right now, and the way you're pitching me the idea here is that this is going to be an all hands on deck type situation. I said, so I'm going to have to talk to my wife because it's going to require time because the studio is going to be in Wilmington. I don't live in Wilmington. I live an hour away.
Yeah.
I said, so it's going to have some tax on my family. So I need to obviously discuss it with her first before I can agree to it. So went home, talked to her. I said, all right. I said, I'm going to not do this, not do this, not do this, and not do this anymore. And her eyes dropped because she knows she liked it. Dude, I do a lot lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's
what makes firefighters such good business.
Yeah.
By the way, they all do
a lot of stuff. And she was like, I had a business. I had owned a gun range, taught classes, heavy in the gun industry. Yeah, shot competitively. So I was like, cool. I'm going to nix all that. And,
really?
Yep.
I'm just on one idea. I tell you what, that's awesome.
I'm going to nix all that. And with your blessing, I'm going to jump into this idea that Steve had. And I pitched her the idea. She was like, whatever makes you happy. I got you here. Don't worry about that. I mean, she's always been a rock star. So, yeah, told Steve we were all good, and that's the wheel started rolling.
Yeah, I was riding down the road with the idea. It had been just banging around. Yeah. And it actually, I guess it probably was part of your previous podcast, but in the moment it didn't feel like that. I was thinking about it. I was like, it can't just be me.
Yeah.
And so I just, like the old Rolodex. I was like, I mentally was flipping through, and I went through all the names of just people in my world.
Yeah.
And we historically don't agree 100% on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I respect his skills on scene, and I respect him. And at the time, I was like, this guy, he doesn't mind talking, and he's talented. And we don't agree on everything. So
that makes for good communication or discord. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah, so I will take a little credit for, I did think it through. It wasn't just, this guy's done a podcast before.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like, I think this might be like pretty good. And so I called you, and he was like, come by the firehouse. We sat on the front bumper of truck 17, and that's when that part kicked in. So he's like, if we're going to do this, I got to do this.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what did you actually do? Did you guys say like, hey, we're gonna is your studio like a actual place, or like how did you kick off the first go?
Yeah. So step one was Amazon got a bunch of my money.
I bet.
Yeah. And then it got a bunch
large
of his
investment.
money.
I know that problem well.
Yeah, it was. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it one time. We're not gonna buy cheap and then keep upgrading. We're going top of the line first out the gate. So, and we had all these tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment and nothing to put them in. They were just in boxes in our living room.
Yeah.
And, and then we were scouring. We thought maybe warehouse style that we can build a corner in, but then what do we do with the rest of the building? So we can build our own brick and mortar, but, just the expenses just piling up. And it's like, so, I mean, maybe if we find somebody that's got a warehouse that'll let us have a corner, you know, and then we can build a studio in the corner. So we threw all these freaking ideas all over the place trying to figure out what'll work. And he called me one day. Once again, I was at work. We were on two different shifts at that time.
Got it. Okay.
So he called me and he was like, I think I found this cool place downtown. And I was like, oh, cool. That'll be $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, it's just come look at it. He said, go talk to Stoffel, which is my battalion chief. And he was like, go talk to him and see if you can have somebody come in for you for about an hour and you can come down here and look at it. And I was like, okay. So I went to talk to my battalion chief, called a buddy. He came in. I left.
That's
went
awesome.
down. went down. We met down there, and it was like in this basement. So it's a subgrade place. We walk in, and it's all this historic underground Wilmington building, original brick. It's wild, really wild.
So it looks and feels like a
Man,
firehouse.
it was
Yes.
yeah, it was really wild, but it was chopped up into these 3 sections, like these 3 offices. And the guy who owns it is in the middle, his little office, and he was a paramedic at Lake Waccamaw.
Oh, no way. So someone of the fire service somehow. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
we didn't know at the time, but
Yep.
yeah, that ended up working out real nice.
So he walked us into this little place. We opened the big glass door, turned on the light, and that is what is the foyer now, which is where we hold all of our Pelican cases and junk.
Nice. That's good.
But he flipped the lights on, and I was like, bro, this is little.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like an 8x10, just very
no
small.
way.
I was like,
so
bro,
funny.
this is little. And then he walked back into like this darker area and flipped on a switch, and it's a big brick archway, and all we could see is another brick wall on the other side of that, probably at least, 12 feet away or so. And we walk in, and it opens up to the left, and it opens up to the right, and it's this gigantic brick room.
No way.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so sick.
Yeah, luckily we didn't know anything about acoustics. So
Oh,
we-
yeah, otherwise
we knew
there's no way.
Yeah, we knew enough to be like, it's perfect. The shape, and it looked amazing, but we didn't know to be scared of the acoustics. But we were able to.
I think we pulled out our phones, and we had like a Hertz meter or something
yeah.
like that.
Here's
Just
what the
set it on the
resonance was.
desk and left it sitting there while we talked to the owner and all this kind of stuff, and just peek over at it from time to time, and could tell that, the acoustics weren't awful, but it had a sheetrock ceiling, so we knew we could fix that.
Yeah.
And we knew we could do things. So yeah, we agreed to it. Both fell in love with it. Had this weird casting couch in there we had to get rid of, and then it had like this big desk. It was creepy, but
That desk was the size of a Civic. Like,
yeah, it was
You have to
huge.
cut up in pieces. Get rid of it.
No, he wanted it, so we ended up. I don't even remember where he ended up taking it, but he took it somewhere. So then we started the build out, which consisted of little foam squares all over the ceiling from one end to the other, which
Yep.
took about 2 days of work.
That's funny.
And just start fumbling with ideas. So we would take these foam cutouts and make different size tables and set them
wow.
in the floor, and then take chairs and go around it like a setting like this. We tried a setting like this.
Were y'all stage production people, or like did you
my
have a
God,
background
no.
in tech, or how did you
No.
come up with like, I'm gonna lay out a
No, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I like different styles. One of my favorite shows, the Sean Ryan Show, this is the style that he does. So that I was like, well, let's try it and see what it did, and neither one of us were comfortable with it. So that led us back to the kitchen table, and I built our first table, and it was an epic disaster.
no?
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was a very pretty table. Huge red oak, beautiful slabs. It was gorgeous, but that
didn't work good.
Bro, that
Heavy.
basement has zero humidity in it. So as soon as that wood got down there, it drawed all the moisture out of it, and we came down there one day, and it's these gigantic potato chips.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was real bad.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
that's
we
awful.
ran it for a little while because we
Yeah,
didn't have another option.
that's
but-
right. Some of the earlier shows, you can still see that table. But, so then rebuilt that, and we've tweaked some stuff here and there. But the process was fun. We probably for 2 months almost. When did I say the other day, Miss Chelsea? Can you remind me? December what was the day we aired our first show? Do you remember?
That's
So
right.
December
Oh, yeah.
24th.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, December 24th was the day we aired our first show. We started renting the place in October.
Oh wow! So you're paying rent on the place. How did you guys fund this? I mean, I feel like that's not an easy thing.
These
Yeah.
2 things right here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
out working.
Yep. Hands. It's been like that mostly, the majority for the whole time.
We had one good sponsor, and unfortunately, we had already spent a bunch of money, and she was like, "What do you need?" So we did have some needs, but that list was so small compared to the
It
previous
was a mutual
list.
friend, Miss Becky.
Oh yeah, I loved you,
Yep.
Becky. She
We,
was
we
nice
got
and
introduced to
gold.
her. Yeah, we got introduced to her. A good friend of ours, Mr. Ken, made the introduction, and we met up in Raleigh and had dinner one night, and basically she kind of interviewed us, but we pitched her. I mean, we didn't pitch her with the intent of her doing anything.
Yeah, just like, hey, here's what we're
just
doing.
talking.
We
Yeah.
thought we'd get a little help from her if she trusted us.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
That was our main thing. We didn't want advertisers like we talked about. So
Yeah.
we were looking for somebody that would do what she did and just trust that our motives were in the right spot and help us a little.
She was one of the nicest people I think I ever met in my whole life. I mean, she would go like, I remember early on, she called us. She's like, hey, listen, guys, I've got this customer. I can't remember where it was. Spec and fire truck. I want you guys to come out and do your thing. Low pressure, whatever. I'll put in a good word for you, but I'll give you a platform. And she's like, I can't do your thing for you, but if you want a platform, I get it. It's hard to get. I got an interview for you. All right. So we'd show up and we'd do a thing, and she'd be like, "Listen, guys, I don't know if their lights are worth the darn, but I know these people are good people. And we've worked with them, da da da." And like in the fire service, I think there's so much of like, if I can trust you and you can trust him, I can trust him.
That's right.
And Miss Becky was so good to us early on. She was like that trust catalyst to a lot of our customers that we didn't know, and she was like, "I know these are good people," and people would trust her, and then they'd trust us.
That's right.
And that, I mean, even to this day, and it was such a shame when I got the news that she was sick and that she had passed away. It was really tough because she was such a nice person. I mean, what did she get out of that, right? There was nothing. And like
Nothing.
she was just doing us a favor as we were a teeny business starting, helping us meet some folks and providing that I need someone to vouch for me. And she's like, I don't know a lot about what exactly they do, but here's the things we do know, and I can trust these guys as far as I can see anyway. And then that was the type of catalyst that we needed. And I feel like in so many businesses, there is that, especially in the fire service where firefighters are who you guys work with and they're who we work with. You need someone to be that intermediary trust catalyst. And it's like,
trust is the common denominator. Like if it doesn't exist, what are you talking about? Like that can't happen.
I
The
tell people all the
currency in
time.
which all relationships exist.
Yeah, it's
You
trust.
base everything off trust, whether you can or can't trust somebody. That's the whole meat and potatoes of the relationship is
On
off
scene.
of that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, especially on a fire call and stuff, it's like,
Everything.
I don't know.
Yep.
I want to know what was hard. When you guys kicked this thing off, what was the thing that made it like, you're at, what, 200 episodes now or 120 episodes? A lot more episodes than we're at.
Yeah, we counted funny. The ones like at Safer, we did a bunch of conversations, but we didn't post them
like
in
episodes?
number.
Sure.
Yeah, yep. So we're at right at 70, somewhere in there.
So proper episodes plus a bunch of other
That's
content.
right. Yeah.
So when you get that far down the list, I mean, obviously you learn things that work and learn things that don't work. I mean, what's that been like?
Yeah.
Hard, man. I'm sure hard. I guess for me, what is hard is obviously planning time. There's only a certain amount of it, so trying to figure out, divvy it up. The fire departments wants their 100 pounds. Wife and the kids want their 100 pounds. I want to give 100 pounds to the show. It's just it's so many pieces of pie that you have to try to balance and make work. So that's probably the toughest thing for me. But as far as specifically the podcast, it's hard figuring out how to get sound right, and then because we didn't know anything about any of this, and video and camera angles, and then editing, and we're still learning about. I don't like to use the word marketing because I don't feel like it's marketing.
I want to dive into this more. I want to understand your thoughts on marketing.
But we're trying to figure that stuff out slowly. We don't put a lot of effort into it very much, really, because on the level of importance scale, that's so far down to us.
Yeah.
So that's hard. That's something else I have to put more time into. So I think time, and then logistics for like aligning guests and then aligning schedules. We're lucky now we're on the same shift, so it's not so bad.
Nice.
Yeah.
At least you can
There
have
for a
Sundays
while,
off.
he was on B shift, I was on A shift, so that's 2 days.
Did you have to put in for that so you could make it work?
No, we would only leave us C shift days.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So that was, and then when Jeremy was still with us, that was another person. So that's 3 schedules with 3 people with 3 families, and then you take into account your guests. So it still is hard. That is, still a bit of a struggle. Just trying to align schedules and doing this and then that sort of thing. But nothing's been too bad stressful. It's hard for me when something is supposed to be happening correctly and it doesn't. That's hard. I don't deal with that real well.
The first hard part, remember all the test episodes?
Yes.
Like we just had friends come in, we just fire up the mics and turn on the cameras. The cameras ended up shifting around and we tried a few different angles and stuff. But the first episode, when you interviewed me, and then I was starting at 0 on edit and trying to figure out these programs. We did Final Cut Pro.
Oh, yeah. That's what we had it in.
Yeah, it was 30 plus hours that it took me to put that show together.
Oh, yeah. It was just totally underestimating the amount of time required to.
Oh, yeah.
You got an hour of content. How long is it going to take you to cut that hour down?
Yeah.
Or
And
like,
it
or
wasn't-
6 if you guys shoot a 6-hour show.
It wasn't editing, like changing the conversation. It was
Trimming the fat, getting the color, getting the audio, getting it all laid
yeah,
out.
putting in pictures and putting in, because I felt this really strong need to have a photograph or a video to go with the story that I was
Yeah, it's a B-roll,
telling.
of course. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
So that part, but yeah, the that time, and then I was so scared, like when I was getting close to what I thought, I was so scared everybody was going to be like, what is this? Why would I give 2 seconds to watch it? You know what I mean? Like that, like.
Is that what happened, or did people give you good feedback?
Nah, it was good feedback.
I don't think I've ever I've never received too much. I've never received any negative feedback as far as what the content is. Now, maybe some bad habits that I practice on camera, maybe whether it be drinking or vaping or whatever it may be. That can be that can be distracting or something like that. Yeah. But I mean, that is part of the. That is part of the human being that I am, and I'm going to be that way. I'm the same person on Sunday morning as I am on Monday morning. Yeah. I'm the same person in the church house as I am at the firehouse. That's what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I'm respectful. I know the crowd that I'm in. If I'm in the presence of a politician, I'm interviewing them. I'm obviously not.
Probably not smoking and drinking at
That's
the same
right.
time. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you're just lying the whole time. That's what you're supposed to do.
No. Sorry. Yeah. But I'm respectful, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm just me.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be hard having the conversations. Like I thought emotion was going to get in the way, and I thought that there would be dead air moments. You know what I mean? Like those were fears early. Oh, okay, break. But none of that. Like I'm sure we had a few moments of wow, those were probably our dead air moments. Was at the end of a story that's like, oh my God. That person just, you know what I mean? Like the weight of it. Yeah, it's like, mercy. It almost feels disrespectful to
ask a follow-up.
Yeah, just carry right along. Yeah.
And there's an art to that, and I found a lot of value in that. His father got sick with COVID real bad, so I was trying to take as much off his plate as possible so he could provide the best care that he could. He was off from work. This is months. Yeah, this is months. So we were still trying to do shows, when it was convenient. That was probably our biggest lull period, just because I knew what he was trying to do and provide care for his dad. And we were still getting together to do shows. I think they helped Joe a lot during that period to have a little bit of normalcy and get away from it for a minute.
Yeah, he made it. Everything's fine.
Yeah,
but,
good. I'm
glad
but in that moment, it was like.
Oh, it was proper hairy, huh?
It didn't look good. Yeah.
So I took the editing from him. I just sent him a message one day and was like, hey, I understand that it takes a lot of time out of your, it takes a lot of time away and probably some brain power that you'd rather not give up right now. So I took the editing.
That's good.
And I've done it since. I enjoyed it. I've got a pretty good flow with it now. So, an hour of content to speak where it used to take 2 and 3 hours per hour of editing on the backside, it's kind of streamlined. Now it's more or less maybe 45 minutes I spend on the front or the back of the show. But as far as the content in the middle, just switching camera angles.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's cool.
It's a lot better. So it's getting better all the time. It seems
that's
like.
Awesome.
So.
How do you guys, we were talking a little about marketing, right? And so like in a business, marketing is what generates, I think, people think sales generates revenue. I think marketing generates revenue. Marketing generates the opportunity for salespeople to then close business. Sure. But in your business, I mean, like, how do you measure success? In our business, it's by volume, it's number of dollars in the door. But in your business, is it viewership or what is success for you?
I have an answer, but
I have an answer too. Do you want to go first?
It happened,
probably the same.
Yeah, it happened more early just because it was new, but still it happens on a pretty regular basis. You'll get a conversation, phone call, text message, something, and it'll reference a conversation that was helpful. So those feel really good. It's like, all right. You know what I mean? Like there's a satisfaction of warm and fuzzy that gets tied to that. It's like, all right, we're doing the right thing. Sometimes a little time goes by and you don't get that positive reward, that measure of success, and it's like, are we still doing it or what? And then somebody will stop by the firehouse or call, and it's like, okay, we're still on it.
Yeah, or you'll go to a trade show. Like we went to Safer this past year. We tried to run into you. You weren't there.
I know.
Yet. We weren't supposed to be there either yet. But we was just, we'd walk around and just, run into people who recognize us as weird. But it's rewardful. Like I really enjoyed the episode when you had, whoever, Tony Cowden on, his view on politics really makes a lot of sense. And he said some things that I thought about later that changed my perspective on something. So just
that's
that.
Cool.
And to mirror his, the first time somebody comes up to you and tells you that a story from somebody on that show changed the outcome of their life.
Yeah, that's a big
their life.
I mean, think about how much impact you have when someone says that. It's like,
how do you put a time, a financial, how do you put a cap on anything when somebody comes up to you and says this story or your story, for that matter, it changed the trajectory of my entire life. That's a measure of success.
That's a big deal.
And one of those, I mean, we could stop tomorrow and
You can check a success box
dude,
and say,
that's that's it. I mean, that's it. That's
so I get the feeling, and maybe this is my into inclination, whatever, that I hear you don't love the marketing world. Like that in general as a philosophy is conflicting personally, whatever. But when I hear about like your drive for impact, I feel like the catalyst for that drive is marketing. You have to bring awareness around whatever you're doing. You have to market what you're doing to the people who need to hear it. What do you think about the whole world in the market? What is it that you love and what is it that you hate? This is so interesting to me.
I can speak for myself. I'm a little bit terrified. I'm terrified that if we put a whole bunch of time, effort, and energy into marketing, that we will blow up. And if we blow up, I'm scared of what that looks like for me.
Blow up like good or blow up like explode? Like never come back?
No, not blow up like we never come back, but just get really, really big.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really fast or something like that. And me not have the opportunity to mentally prepare myself for that, and it's shooting my ego through the roof. And then I lose sight of what it is that we're supposed to be doing, and it becomes the best content to satisfy that dopamine hit, which is the likes, the subscribes, the comments, rather than what the
to
mission
satisfy
is.
the firefighter.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an addictive personality for sure, and if it's getting satisfied through social media,
I think a lot of firefighters do. It's the adrenaline hit when the pager goes off. I mean, let me be honest. I enjoy that.
I mean, that's just me being honest. I'm terrified of it, and I've told him time and time again, hey, if you see me slipping, if you catch me drifting and slipping away from what this is supposed to be, so you better punch me right in my teeth.
Yeah.
Say, hey, that ain't what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
He's much more level-headed. We're often yin and yang.
Yeah.
Often.
You probably need that in anything. I mean, Kama is my wife, but also our COO, and she is, we think similarly about maybe ethics and integrity and nothing else.
Sure.
And so and not like we disagree, but we just think about things differently. And so you almost have to have that balancing personality. But
so that's it for me. But I'm not I can't answer.
Remember the comparison you made of the most trusted person is that fireman, and then the least trusted is a salesman.
Yeah.
I think there's a fear that if we put in effort into the marketing, that perception that we're turning into salesmen or that we're muddying up the waters with sales, that's our biggest hurdle. Like we need to get on board. If we're going to help more people, you got to grow, right? Yeah. Like, so we see it and we know it, but we're so nervous about that, the sleazy sales appearance, or how would you describe it? Like it's just
like,
that.
could someone mistake you for having the wrong
That's right.
thing?
That's
I
right.
feel like marketing is an opportunity to share your authentic self. I mean, to share that, like, hey, I'm going to stand here on the stage and I'm going to tell you, and then you tell, and then you show, and then you tell again, and then you show, and then you tell about what you did, and then you let someone else tell about what you did, and all of a sudden, like, consistency is king. And it's a really interesting way you put that. Like, when I think the guy that started the Ritz-Carlton Hotel was Horst Schultz. He's a German guy, grew up in the hotelier space in France and in Germany and Europe. One of the most amazing stories. I would encourage you to read a book called Excellence Wins. He wrote it, and it was, phenomenal. But one of the things that I took away from that book was that he developed a business of, like, hospitality. I can't remember how he phrased it, but like hospitality professionals serving, other professionals in the space. And he said that for him and the way they create that business, the goal was to create the ultimate value proposition, create the best experience, the best everything, like excellence across the board. Once you have created absolute excellence, then bill someone what they're willing to pay for it. And you're not saying, I'm going to charge you a fortune and then I'll, create something that's pretty good. It's create the ultimate experience first, and then whatever someone's willing to pay, they're willing to pay it. And so I feel like, and like if you've ever, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel is one of the most amazing operational excellence, use cases that I've ever been at. But I never feel badly. And I don't stay at these places very often, but like, once a year, my wife and I go on a big, like weekend away or something.
Nice.
But when we go, it's like, you get to experience the results of that mission being first. So like when they greet you at the door, there's a certain amount of space between the greeter and you that they won't, if you're having a conversation outside that space, they'll let you have that conversation. Once you enter that space, they're intentional about the way they interact with you. The way they check in, the way they say, my pleasure, the way, how can I serve you? Like, these sorts of things are so intentionally ingrained that it makes it worth, like, I feel so good about, whatever, it's $500 for an hour. It's like ridiculous, right? But I feel so good about trading my $500 for that service.
Please let me give you my money.
Yeah, and it's like, wait a minute, and and you can apply that in any scale size, right? Like even I prefer going to Chick-fil-A over, not Bodangles, but like over Popeyes, right? And there's still chicken, and chicken sandwich is chicken sandwich.
That's
but
not true.
when I walk into Chick-fil-A and I feel so good about the experience, and I walk into Popeyes and I feel like I just want to jump out the window because these people drive me crazy. It's like I feel like if you apply that philosophy to what you guys do, and you market that authenticity, and you don't market the words authenticity, you actually are authentic in your marketing. It's like create the ultimate experience and then charge what someone's willing to pay. Create that ultimate story and be authentic, and then put fuel on that fire versus the opposite. I feel like there's a way that you can do that authentically. Our business is a good example. Candidly, our whole story is we're accountable to the firefighter on the end of the hose line. So our mission is helping first responders do their jobs more safely and effectively after dark so they can save lives. And when we evaluate every purchasing decision, every marketing decision, every guest on our podcast, every time that I'm going to spend my time or our employees' time, it's does that help us help others save lives? And if it does, we do it. And if it doesn't, we don't do it. And we had a discussion the other day about making some stuff for a trade show, and it was like, I don't know that helps us help others save lives.
Sure.
And we killed the idea. And so it's funny because if you build a business that has that authenticity at its core, and a business could be a podcast, a business could be we're like a lighting manufacturer, right? It's a hard parts manufacturer. But authenticity is still, it's something you can touch. And so if you can be so true to that, and you can turn down the sponsor that doesn't have that same core value, they're like, hey, I want you to talk about, sell this little widget. It's a subscription plan for firefighters, and all of a sudden then they're hooked to their phone. And it's like, maybe that's not a good thing. So maybe you don't take that sponsor, but maybe there is someone that gets behind, I don't know what, National Crisis Hotline. Maybe you can work with these. I don't know who, but there are people in businesses that share common themes. And I feel like when you align the common theme businesses with each other, then it's okay to trade the results, which is the profit of that good work, with each other and grow your businesses because you're doing more good that way.
Sure.
And I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I feel like in our business, that's been so important that I don't want to be perceived as just like making a sale for a thing. I mean, our shareholders are not some giant corporate interest. They're not some PE. Our shareholders are firefighters that rely on us to keep their fire scenes lit after dark so they can save lives.
Sure.
And if they can rely on us, then great, we can trade dollars and we can grow the business. And then I don't feel bad about the fact that there's profit in our business because we're actually helping at the front of our business, mission is helping those first responders. We do a good job at it. So I feel like you guys do a good job at what you do. Long ramble. Don't feel badly about making an impact and put fuel on that fire. I feel like that's such a great and noble thing to do.
Yeah, we're going to have some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
I like
Your past scrolling, I'm out.
Right.
Yeah.
Your analogy about the widget, that's got like ooh yuck written all over it, right?
Yeah.
So that's been...
Keep the widgets out.
Yeah, I think we put in place, like if there's a 10% chance that the perception is ooh yuck, just leave that whole room out of play. And that's what we've done so far. I think you raised a good point that we are growing, and we ended up having a conversation last night about exploring more social media presence and doing more.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah. So,
Chelsea's the queen of our social media. She does a really good job of helping us make sure that message is the right message. In addition to just like creating views, like are they the right views? Are they the right ears and eyes? Is it the right story?
We've got a couple folks that we don't directly, they're not a Chelsea for us, but they are consumers of our content who are very honest. And
you need those truth tellers.
Yeah, it's like, so if we make a post or something like that, and I'll get a text message, or Steve will get a text message and be like, I don't really think that's appropriate. So whoop, it's gone. No questions, no nothing. It's just gone. Yeah, that's definitely helpful. So.
That's interesting. Well, where do you guys want to see it go? What's the bigger picture plan? If you don't want to lose that track, you don't want it to explode, what do you want it to do?
I want it to be super easy for, if there's a difficult conversation happening or even a not difficult conversation happening, I want it to be super easy for somebody to say, you should check out show whatever number to compare to that event that's happening. If it's funny or if it's a need, but I want it to be a reference point so where somebody's like, oh, you got to check out Primary Complete, like show 300. That show addresses this, and it's a good contact. Like that's what I want, is that useful reference and I want it to be somewhere that people go for entertainment, even if you're not dealing with tough shit all the time. You know what I mean?
Sometimes
Like,
it's just fun and
yeah,
fun.
yeah. And I kind of feel like I've overstated how much is tough. It's not tough all the time. Like I was good.
The majority of it is great. Yeah.
So, and we talked about early, like if we just beat the drum of mental health, then we'll get pigeonholed, I think was your term. And then that's just what it is. And it's not very entertaining.
Yeah, it's like you're always talking about down stuff all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that sucks, right?
Yeah. So
The firehouse is one of the funniest places in the entire world. I mean, that
100%.
is
100%.
one of the most rich environments for storytelling and
Yes,
for BSing. I mean,
absolutely.
like, if you loved the college frat house, holy shit,
Yeah.
you'll love
You'll love the firehouse.
yeah.
Exactly.
So if it's this platform that people listen to for fun and then listen to for need and then can help somebody else with it, that's what I'm wanting to see moving forward.
Yeah, I'm the same way. A place where somebody can make a reference, like we'll interview a chief or something like that, and we'll be talking retention and recruitment or something like that. And, a few months or whatever goes by, and another conversation sprigs up. It's just like Steve said, and you're like, oh, well, go check out this show right here. They go and they throw all kinds of ideas out and about around.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. And I don't want to be strictly always all fire all the time either. I think a lot of
You said you had the politician.
yes,
Like
I feel like almost every podcast in our genre, if you will, if you can even have a genre in this, but
yeah.
it's all fire all the time, and I don't want to be that because we're more than that.
Yeah.
So general conversation with bar owners, people like that. I
It's
mean,
human interest
that's
versus
right.
just fire service.
That's right. So we're not so singular. We're multifaceted people. All of us are, all the firemen, and it's important to be able to express that we do more than just fight fire. We're dads, we're fathers, we're sports athletes, we're people.
stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff. So,
And there's an interesting connection between your fire service careers and your personal lives too. I feel like
That's right.
That's really cool.
yeah, everybody always says find your niche. You got to find your niche and go. And I'm like, well, I mean, is there a niche in life? I mean, when you're trying to capture the whole picture of human beings, is there a niche per se? I mean, it's tough. It's a tough street that we want to be on. We don't want to be on one side of the line. We want to dance both.
Yeah.
So,
That reference thing I talked about, have you ever had like a full tilt anxiety attack?
I have not. I have seen 1,000 of them, but I have not. I'm fortunate, I guess. Yeah.
So, like in a moment of a real anxiety attack, logic doesn't work.
Yeah.
And your whole existence is like gravity gets turned sideways, logic won't apply.
Yeah.
And you're really desperate to just get a hold of something that won't move.
Yeah, something firm, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And some of these conversations that we've had with folks, I'm thinking of the paramedic that came on not too long ago, but
Chris Komatsu.
in that time, like I've had anxiety throughout here and there. If I knew that this show, that guy talked about a moment, and it's, if you can recognize, like he's describing the same things,
Yeah.
and now he's sitting here having a healthy conversation. Anxiety's telling you you're going to die. Like
Yeah.
at the end of this,
That's the purpose of the anxiety attack, is to try and give you the thing.
yeah. So if I can see this person was experiencing the same thing and they put the pieces together and they made it through, then
Yeah.
I can do it too. And
That's interesting.
That's part of that reference for the harder stuff, and then the fun stuff, self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that being able to help somebody in that moment was probably the foundation, the earliest part, and that to extend forward. That's what I want, is that reference back to be able to have these shows for the check out this guy.
Yeah,
and
just
show
have an
300.
index of like topics that are.
Yeah, basically
Yeah.
we're building, we're keeping the show going on the same trajectory it is, but in the shadows we're building this catalog that people can go back and re-reference. And I mean, I see us being a part of fire department training somewhere.
Yeah.
Like firehouses training, like if they're having a monthly training objective on whatever it may be, and we've had a guest on, a subject matter expert in that particular area,
Then share the episode across.
they'll pull it off of our platforms and put it into their monthly training objectives they send out to their department. I see that being a real thing.
Yeah.
A language disclaimer.
We did one on this show. It was like, we may have a few F-bombs. We're really sorry, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, guys, how can folks find your show? Where do they go to listen to it? Is you guys got a website? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Hit them. That's you.
Well, they can find us on any podcast platform. So Apple seems to be working best right now. YouTube, super solid all the time. Spotify, if you want just audio.
Just search Primary Complete.
Yep, Primary
No space, no
Complete.
caps.
Primary Complete podcast. You can. I don't even know if we're Googleable, but and then same thing on social media. It's just Primary Complete podcast.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, Steve and Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really awesome learning
Absolutely.
about your podcast, your careers, your personal lives, and we're so glad to have you here on the 24/40.
Absolutely,
awesome,
man.
man.
Thank
Yeah,
you for the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Do us a favor, slide over to iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. Leave a 5-star review and leave a comment. If you want to support further, share it with somebody. Ask them to like, subscribe, and share it with their friends. If they can benefit from it, we need to spread it out. The more you like and comment, the more visible we are on all these platforms when people are just searching Firefighter Podcast. It'll come up Primary Complete a little bit quicker, and they won't have to dig quite so far to find us. We really appreciate that. Visit the website. It's a pretty good site. It's got all kinds of fun links and stuff. You can also find the shows there on the website as well, and that's www.primarycompletepodcast.com. Thank you all so much for your support. Again, we love you. Thank you for helping us make conversation great again.